Hi everybody. The purpose of this video is to give you a brief overview of what Schutzhund is. If you're thinking about starting in the sport or just want to know more about it, then watch this video along with my other 3 videos on tracking, obedience, and protection. After watching this video, you should have a pretty clear idea of what the sport entails and how to get started in it. Schutzhund was developed in Germany in the early 1900s as a breed test for the German Shepherd. The word Schutzhund stands for protection dog. It was developed to test the German Shepherd to determine whether or not it would be suitable for breeding and/or police work. In other words, in order for a dog to be breed-worthy or be placed into police work, it would need to pass the Schutzhund test. Today it has evolved into an international competitive dog sport that all breeds can compete in. Just a few years ago, the name was changed from Schutzhund to IPO. IPO is an acronym that means International Prüfung Ordnance in German. Although we call it IPO nowadays, IPO is essentially the exact same thing as Schutzhund. The sport of IPO consists of 3 separate phases: tracking, obedience, and protection. In addition, there are 3 levels of IPO: the IPO Level 1, IPO Level 2, and IPO 3. The IPO 1 is the first and most basic level. The IPO 2 is the intermediate level, and the IPO 3 is the highest and most advanced level. Each phase becomes increasingly more difficult at each level. The IPO 3 is the highest title you can attain with your dog. However, in order to go for the IPO 3, you must first pass the IPO 1 and IPO 2. However, even before you can attempt your IPO 1, you must first pass the BH. The acronym BH stands for Begleithund in German. This translates from German to companion dog. The BH is a basic obedience and temperament test. There is no tracking or protection work in the BH. The purpose of the BH is to ensure that the dog has a good temperament and basic obedience training before the handler attempts their IPO 1. And like I said, you must first pass the BH before you attempt your IPO 1. Although Schutzhund has evolved from a breed test into a competitive sport for dogs, there still are a lot of people who use IPO as a breed test. In other words, they will not breed to a dog unless it has passed the IPO 1. Although Schutzhund was originally exclusive to the German Shepherd, nowadays any breed can participate in IPO. The most common breeds you'll see participating in IPO are the German Shepherd, the Belgian Malinois, the Doberman, the Rottweiler, and the Boxer. Although there are several other breeds you'll occasionally see doing IPO, these are the most common. Like I said, if you're interested in getting into IPO, you should watch the breakdown videos of tracking, obedience, and protection so that you know what you're getting into. IPO competitions are commonly called trials. The 4 main levels of competitions, or trials, are club level, regional level, national level, and international level. A club level competition is the lowest level of competition in IPO. These competitions or trials are generally small and consist only of competitors who live locally. The next level of competition is regional. A regional level competition consists of competitors from all across a particular region of the country. In the U.S., there are approximately 6 regions. Each region consists of several states, so a regional competition can have many competitors from all nearby states. A national level competition consists of competitors from all over the country. Usually the best dogs in the country are competing at these trials. International level competitions are the highest level of competition in IPO. These consist of the best dogs from each country all over the world. Now let's talk about how you pass each level of IPO. The person who decides whether you pass or fail is the judge. Whenever you trial your dog at a competition, there will always be a judge standing out with you, watching you and your dog. This judge is evaluating each exercise and awarding you a certain number of points based on how correctly you and your dog perform the exercise. The first level, the BH, is graded by a simple pass or fail. You are not necessarily awarded a number of points for the BH. To pass the BH, you must complete all the required exercises, and then the judge will tell you if you pass or fail. If you fail the BH, you are allowed to retake it. The IPO 1, 2, and 3 are all graded out of 300 points. Because there are 3 phases, each phase is worth 100 points. You must get at least 70 points in each phase in order to pass and obtain your title. So let's say you are going for your IPO 1 title. You score 70 points in tracking, 70 points in obedience, and 69 points in protection. Because you scored under 70 points in protection, you would not get your IPO 1 title. You would need to retake the IPO 1 at another trial. You would also need to perform all 3 phases again. You would not only need to retake the phase you failed, but you would also have to retake the phases you passed. And you would still need to score at least 70 points in each phase. Once you score above 70 points in all 3 phases at the same trial, then you are awarded your title. So if you got your IPO 1 title, you would then be allowed to go for your IPO 2 title. If you pass the IPO 2, you would then go for your IPO 3. Like I said, the IPO 3 is the highest title you can achieve. As I said earlier, the sport of IPO is open to all breeds and to all dogs. However, that does not mean that the sport is suitable for all breeds and all dogs. Just because you have a German Shepherd, a Malinois, or a Doberman does not mean the dog will be able to do the work. The first step you should take is to have your dog tested and evaluated. Whenever a person brings a dog to me and voices an interest in doing IPO, the first thing I do is test the dog. The reason I do this is because the dog must have the right genetic qualities to be able to do the work. If the dog does not have the right set of qualities or drives, then it may be difficult or unrealistic to train the dog for IPO. Once you have your dog evaluated and the dog is approved for the work, then you should ask yourself, what are your goals? I have many handlers that I work with who do not necessarily want to compete in IPO, but just want a fun activity they can do with their dog. You don't necessarily need to have aspirations to compete in order to participate in IPO. You can absolutely just do it for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if you decide your goal is to compete in IPO, then like any sport, IPO has many different levels of competition you can go to. Like I said, you should determine what your goals are before you start the sport. If this is your very first dog in IPO, then you should obviously keep your goals realistic. There aren't many people who are capable of going to an international level competition with their very first dog. In addition to evaluating your goals, you should also consider what your dog is capable of. To be able to go to an international level competition, you need to be a very good trainer, but you also need a very high quality dog. That is, a dog that comes from excellent bloodlines and has excellent genetic qualities. I can help you determine what your dog's capabilities are based on what I see in the evaluation process and based on your dog's bloodlines, if you know them. I'm frequently asked how long it takes to get an IPO 1. The answer to this question is it depends. It depends on many factors, such as how high of a score you want to get, how talented your dog is, how good of a trainer you are, and how much time you spend training. Aside from this, there is a minimum age requirement for taking the BH and IPO 1. Your dog must be at least 15 months old to take the BH and at least 18 months old to take the IPO 1. However, very few dogs are ready to take the IPO 1 by 18 months old. I found the average length of time it takes for most people to get their IPO 1 is anywhere between 1.5 years to 3 years. So most dogs will be about 2 to 3 years old when they are ready to take their IPO 1. And this is under the assumption you start training when your dog is a puppy. However, if you don't start training until your dog is older, it will be about 1.5 to 3 years till they are ready. Like I said, you should determine what your goals are with your dog before you start. If your goal is just to pass, that is, just get a bare minimum score of 70 in each phase, then you can have your dog ready relatively quickly. However, if your goal is to get good scores above 90 in each phase, then it is going to take much longer to achieve this. So this greatly affects the time it takes. I'm also frequently asked how many hours a day you should spend training. Ideally, you should spend a little bit of time every day working with your dog. You do not need to spend hours on end every day training, but you should do at least a little something every day. Remember, there are 3 phases, so you have plenty to work on. You could do tracking, training one day, obedience the next, and protection the next day. You do not necessarily need to train all 3 phases every day. I recommend doing at least 4 tracking training sessions a week, 5 obedience training sessions a week, and about 2 protection training sessions a week. Each session doesn't need to be very long. For example, each tracking session could be about 30 minutes. Each obedience session about 20 to 30 minutes, and each protection session about 10 to 15 minutes. And you could do multiple sessions each day. So it is not a huge time commitment, but it is important that you're doing a little something every day. If you keep this up, most dogs should be ready within the previously stated time frame. If you don't have this much time to train your dog during the week, you can still get your title. It just might take you a little bit longer, and it might adversely affect your score. So if you are only training your dog, let's say, a couple times a week in tracking, a couple times a week in obedience, and maybe just once a week in protection, it might take more than 3 years to obtain your title, or you might not get as high of a score when you do trial your dog. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what IPO is and what you should expect. Make sure to watch the tracking, obedience, and protection breakdown videos as well, so that you have a clear idea of what you'll need to teach your dog. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you out on the training field.